Okay, so let me see if I can help you understand this. Like I mentioned, there's been lots of legal explanation and interpretations from both the NASA side and, of course, the Jubilee team as well, trying to help us understand this. But let's get an expert opinion on this. And we have Felix Owuor, he's an election law expert. Sir, thank you so much for joining us on KTN Prime. So break it down for my viewers, what exactly this withdrawal by NASA means. Because in 2013, the Supreme Court said, suppose, however, that the candidate or candidates who took part in the original election dies or abandons the electoral quest before the scheduled date, then the provisions of Article 138 1B would become applicable. Of course, 138 wasn't there, so that was replaced by 138 8B. And specifically for this particular conversation that we are having, it says a candidate for election as president or deputy president dies on or before the scheduled election date. That is where a presidential election shall be cancelled and a new election held. Where are we as a country?
Well, I think the country should remember that the Supreme Court, during the petition number 5 of 2013, the Raila Odinga petition, the Supreme Court was invited for the first time following the promulgation of the new constitution to make or to interpret Article 138 and 140, okay, which they did. And in 2013, they came to the conclusion that, and upheld the decision of the IEBC that Uhuru Kenyatta was validly elected as president. However, in making the interpretation of Article 138 and 140, and drawing the distinction between the first round election, in other words, the election that we had on the 8th August of 2017, and the subsequent election, and in our case, an election arising as a result of an invalidation of the president-elect. The Supreme Court dealt with the following issues. Number one, who are the candidates that are allowed to participate in that particular election? That is paragraph 289. And what is the mode of the nomination? And most fundamentally, and as you pointed out, in paragraph 290, they dealt with the question that what happens if a candidate dies, and the Supreme Court did not just stop at that. They widened the scope of interpretation and include circumstances that would involve a candidate's withdrawing, and in the actual word of the Supreme Court, abandons the election. Okay. Then the Supreme Court referred that the applicable law would be Article 138 8B. Which article states as follows, that an election stands in, presidential elections will be cancelled, and B, in the event a candidate dies, Now, but because they are given a wider scope, and they are allowed by law to do that, the circumstances of the withdrawal of Prime Minister Raila Odinga from participating in the the 26th October election technically means that there is no election, and that is the law.
Technically, there's no election. President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy today, immediately Raila Odinga announced that withdrawal. They said, we're going to have an election with or without you in this race.
Yes. It must be, the president and the deputy president must be reminded that the powers and the jurisdiction to hold the election does not vest in the presidency. It is a power that is constitutionally given to the IEBC, Article 88, and the IEBC Act. So, and in both the Constitution and the IEBC Act, the IEBC has functional and administrative autonomy, and it should not take direction from the presidency, Prime Minister Raila Odinga, or any other powers in the Republic. So they can make this determination. So the point is, it's not up to the president or the deputy president to make that determination.
Okay, Musalia Mudavadi as well said this now means that the IEBC needs to cancel the repeat election.
I mean, if you apply the law, the Supreme Court ruling judgment of 2013,
then it makes sense.
And Article 138.8b, then that is the position. However, I see a situation where this issue will end up in the Supreme Court.
Okay.
Once again, our election or questions surrounding the validity of a presidential election will be dealt with by the Supreme Court.
Okay, so assuming, like you say, we follow the law as it is, and there's no election on the 26th, what next?
There are two routes, roadmaps here. Number one is the country would then make reference to Article 136 and 142. The Constitution has dealt with possible constitutional vacuum in two ways. Number one is that it has provided for in Article 134 that the president term of office shall end when a new president is sworn in.
Okay.
But Article 142 states as much, but make reference to election under Article 136, meaning the election that we held on August, the first round election. Let me call it the first round election. And the process then is elaborated further in Article 138, where a president can be elected outrightly, or there could be a presidential runoff, or there could be an invalidation of a presidential election, such as the situation where we found ourselves in. It expects that particular provision of the Constitution that that process will end 60 days after the date of the Supreme Court judgment, which in our case should be 30th of October. What then happens if there is no election? My reading of the Constitution, within the 60 days, the repeat presidential election, my reading of the Constitution is that Article 146 will kick in. And that is the article that deals, presumably, with the vacancy in the office of the president. And it makes reference to resignation, death, incapacity, Article 144, or impeachment, Article 145. Now, if there is a vacancy, of course, the deputy president will assume the functions of the office of the president. But, however, if the office of the deputy president is also vacant, as in the situation and the case where we are in, then what happens is the Speaker of the National Assembly will exercise the functions of the office of the president for 60 days, upon which a fresh election must be held.
Is that what everyone is referring to as caretaker government?
Well, you can give it whatever name, but the Speaker of the National Assembly will be in charge.
All right, Felix Owuor, election law expert, thank you so much for your time, for speaking to us on KTN Prime and helping us to understand now where do we go from here after NASA's presidential flag bearer Raila Odinga withdrew from the repeat presidential election. You're watching KTN Prime. Thank you so much for staying with us. Allow me to take another short break. I'll be right back.